What's up, everybody? I'd like you to meet Wade Brown, who is a Mormon and runs the YouTube channel Consider the Facts. This video is a response to his video, Smashing the Book of Mormon with DNA. Alrighty then.
And in logical debate, a straw man argument is an argument where you yourself build the premise or premises to represent your opponent. You tell everybody what the other person thinks. You have to put something into their mouths to see whether they believe it or not.
Well, I'll agree that those who knowingly use a straw man argument are being dishonest. I hope that you will present your arguments with a little bit more honesty and act with more integrity than some of those who purposely are deceptive in their defense.
Imagine 5 premises. The number one premise should be that the basic people in the Book of Mormon, their prophet Lehi and his wife Sariah, were of Jewish descent. But you don't want them to look too carefully at that premise, because it just isn't what the Mormons believe, and it sure isn't what the Book of Mormon says.
Really? Well, we better take a closer look then. So what does the Book of Mormon say?
You see, the Book of Mormon makes it clear that Lehi was from another tribe of people. Lehi said that he was a descendant of Joseph, not Judah.
Okay. That still makes Lehi related to all of the descendants of Judah through his father Jacob. I mean, all you've done is taken the relationship of Lehi and Judah back one more generation. Do you really think there were enough mutations in that one generation to keep us from being able to detect a relationship between Joseph and Judah? They would both carry their father's Y chromosome DNA marker. Your argument is a logical fallacy. You're also putting words into the mouth of the critics. All of the arguments that I have come across say that there is no evidence for a Hebrew, Israelite, Middle Eastern ancestry for the Native Americans.
I don't know of any data that suggest particular similarity of Native American populations to any population of the Middle East.
Like the Mormons believe that the Indians, the American Indians, are a lost tribe of Israel. Well, DNA testing shows that is not true.
Archaeologists and physical anthropologists have not found any evidence of Hebrew origins for the people of North, South, and Central America.
Currently, on the available evidence, there is nothing to suggest any relationship whatsoever with Israelites.
The overwhelming evidence negates the Book of Mormon claim that the American Indian represents a genealogical descendant from Israel.
What will be your position when DNA analysis will show that in the history never had been an immigration from Israel to the North America?
We are in a dilemma now. The genetic evidence shows clearly that American Indians are not Hebrews. They are not Israelites.
Did you hear anyone say Jewish ancestry? Did you hear anybody mention the tribe of Judah? You're misrepresenting what the critics' argument is and attacking that. Isn't that how you defined a straw man earlier?
I know you'd never guess, but between you and me, I built this straw man myself.
Well, my work is done. What do you think?
Masterpiece.
I agree, it was very well done, but please don't make any more.
Not only that, another major group of people in the Book of Mormon declare that they came from a whole different family before the Israelites even existed. Now that's hard to tie to the modern Jewish people or their DNA.
Wade here is referring to the Jaredites. In the Book of Mormon, they were led to the New World after the confusing of the languages at the Tower of Babel, which, if you don't know, is a bunch of baloney. See my video on the Jaredites for why we know that this story is a myth. Why is Wade bringing up the Jaredites? This is a good question because neither the critics nor the apologists include the Jaredites into the Book of Mormon DNA discussions, because the Book of Mormon says they all went extinct. They all died out about the same time that Lehi arrived. They destroyed themselves. They are not applicable to these discussions. Wade knows this. He has to. And he's bringing them up simply in an attempt to obfuscate the issue. So what does the Book of Mormon really teach? Well, the title page of the Book of Mormon describes itself as an abridgment of the record of the people of Nephi, and also of the Lamanites, written to the Lamanites who are a remnant of the house of Israel. It also says in the introduction that the Lamanites are the principal ancestors of the American Indians. Therefore, it is correct to say that the Book of Mormon teaches that the American Indians are Israelites.
The second premise that you might make up is that Mormons believe no other people ever came to America. That sounds good, doesn't it? The problem is, I don't know of any Mormon that believes that. And the Book of Mormon sure doesn't say it.
It doesn't? Well, let's look at what it does say. Shortly after arriving in the Americas, Lehi taught his sons that it is wisdom that this land should be kept as yet from the knowledge of other nations. For behold, many nations would overrun the land, and there would be no place for an inheritance. Wherefore I, Lehi, have obtained a promise, that inasmuch as those whom the Lord God shall bring out of the land of Jerusalem shall keep his commandments, they shall prosper upon the face of this land, and they shall be kept from all other nations, that they may possess this land unto themselves. Now that makes it pretty clear that the only people that would come here would be those who the Lord brought out of Jerusalem.
In fact, the Book of Mormon states clearly that other people would come to this land. Not only come, but they'd be inspired to come by the Lord.
Wade is referring to Nephi's vision of the future, where he sees a man among the Gentiles who was separated from the seed of my brethren by the many waters. And I beheld the Spirit of God, that it came down and wrought upon the man, and he went forth upon the many waters, even unto the seed of my brethren, who were in the promised land. Now it's commonly understood in the church that this is talking about Christopher Columbus. Nephi continues, And it came to pass that I beheld many multitudes of Gentiles upon the land of promise, and I beheld the wrath of God, that it was upon the seed of my brethren, and they were scattered before the Gentiles, and were smitten. And I beheld the Spirit of the Lord, that it was upon the Gentiles, and they did prosper and obtain the land for their inheritance. This is understood in the church to be the coming of the Europeans to the Americas. Wayne refers to this passage without giving any details. He knows, like every student of the Book of Mormon, that the vision is about the European migration to the Americas. So for him to try to use this passage to make it look like the Book of Mormon predicts that lots of people would be coming to the Americas during the time of the Nephites is very dishonest and deceptive. When we look closely at what the book actually says, it ruins Wade's whole premise.
Now that ruins the whole premise, so don't even get near what the book says.
Well, too bad. We're going to go near the book, whether you like it or not.
The third premise is that Mormons believe the people who were left at the end of the Book of Mormon were pure descendants of Lehi and Sariah. Because the Book of Mormon never says the last people in the Book of Mormon were descendants of Lehi.
Wade, we just read from Nephi's vision that when the Europeans came to America, they would encounter the seed of my brethren. That would be the descendants of Laman and Lemuel, his brothers. This makes them descendants of Lehi. Did you forget what you were just talking about, Wade? Well, I guess that happens sometimes when you don't reference your work. You would think that someone who had earned their PhD would know better. For some reason, Wade uses the word pure here. Wade, why did you choose to say they had to be pure descendants?
Again, it works best to put into their mouths only what you want them to say.
Well, you kind of have to put that into their mouths, because I've never heard any critic of the church ever demand this before. You are creating yet another straw man here by using the phrase pure descendants. That is not an argument that the critics are using against the authenticity of the Book of Mormon. And it doesn't really make any sense.
Can I throw something else in here?
Oh, do you have to?
There's a lot of talk about the Asian connection to America, and there ought to be. It's only logical. But did you know that isn't new to students of the Book of Mormon? Long before modern genetic studies, Book of Mormon scholars were showing that connection in two completely different ways.
Where am I? What happened? It's all right, Betty. You were just doing some very stupid things.
Anthropologists, linguists, and archaeologists had also made this connection with Asia decades before the DNA studies confirmed what they had already found. It's been known for a long, long time. So what are the two ways that the Book of Mormon scholars contributed to this knowledge, Wade? Tell me, what does the Book of Mormon say about Asia?
But we won't worry about that right now.
So why did you bring it up? I am just supposed to believe you when you imply that the Book of Mormon scholars discovered this connection before anybody else did, just because you say it? The attempt at obfuscation continues.
Tergasso certainly was thirsty. Who?
The fourth premise is that anything any Mormon has ever said has to be what Latter-day Saints believe today. Do you know of any other group of people that has to believe everything anyone among them ever said? No one else is held to that standard.
Just when I think you've said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
Neither are you. Well, has any critic of the church ever said that anything that any Mormon has ever said in the history of the church is binding on the entire church forever? Wade is just making this claim up out of thin air. It is based on nothing but his own persecution complex. He tries to make it look pretty, but he has just created yet another straw man.
The fifth premise is the best of all. You don't even have to say it. You just kind of leave it hanging in the air. It's this. You Mormons claim that your Lehi and Sariah lived in ancient America. Okay, show us their DNA.
That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know anyone who has ever said that the DNA of the individuals, Lehi and Sariah, have to be produced in order for the Book of Mormon to be true. You just created another straw man. It might be moving, it might be sitting up, but there's very little to it, and I think I can see the strings.
I have risen.
The burden of proof is on you.
Well, actually it is. The burden of proof is on the person making a claim and proclaiming that they actually have knowledge about something. But if you can't show it, then you don't know it, and you shouldn't say that you do. And you wouldn't if you really cared about the truth. So Wade, what's your response when you are asked to show what you say you know?
No, we don't have the DNA for Peter or James or John the Baptist or Jeremiah or for Moses.
That's your response? That's pathetic. The Book of Mormon DNA issue has nothing to do with what we haven't found, but it is entirely based on what we have found. It's based on the evidence. You say you have a PhD. This means you had to do some kind of research, doesn't it? I mean, what kind of school did you go to?
You are a scientist, correct? Oh, that's right. I have a PhD in truthology.
Moon, teaspoons, that's all gibberish to me, I'm afraid.
Wade, you started off your video by claiming that the critics of the Book of Mormon are using straw man arguments. But you never accurately described what any of those arguments were. You did nothing but create a bunch of straw men yourselves. You are either one of the most dishonest people I've ever encountered, or you are just ignorant of the critics' argument. Given the strength of the evidence against a Hebrew Israelite origin of the Native Americans, I can understand why a true-believing Mormon would be afraid to look too closely at the arguments that are based on the evidence. But if you're going to debate in the arena of ideas on this issue, you can't pretend that these arguments aren't as strong as they really are. The truth does not need to be feared. If something is true, then it can withstand investigation all on its own, and we should believe it. It doesn't need to be spun or whitewashed or apologized for. If you have to make up lies and half-truths and complicated responses to arguments that are critical of your position, you probably don't have near as much truth as you think you do.
Well, we've certainly had quite a morning, haven't we?
We certainly have.